Welcome back, sports fans. This is the transmission out of the engine and laid out as it should be according to the diagram. When doing the initial search or initial layout of the parts, you have the main shaft and then all of the gears that go on the main shaft. You got the counter shaft and all the gears that go on the counter shaft, all laid out just as they come off of the shaft, which will make reassembly a lot easier. When I first did it, I'll move these. When I first did this, and I'm looking at the parts and I'm looking at the drawing, we have a problem here. Okay? Where the X is where something was missing, and it's a washer. And I thought at first that maybe it was stuck to the side of the fourth gear, which it wasn't. And after searching around inside the crankcase, right down here by the where the oil screen's at, where the intake for the oil screen is at, right here. Yeah, if I can get it to focus, there we go. Right down in here, I found these lovely chunks. That's supposed to be a washer. That washer is $7.21, give or take, depending on who you buy it from. And so for $7.21 worth of washer, we're doing a $600 teardown, which I'm lucky that I have a little mechanical skill and can do this, because this would have been roughly a $2,000 job if I was paying a mechanic to do it. So there's the culprit. Mr. Washer, going to get replaced. Some of these gears are on bushings rather than being locked to the shaft. And in the case of this fourth gear here, it's got a few little wear spots, if you can see it. Hard to see on video. Inside that bushing, it's a little bit sloppy on the shaft. So I'm noticing that it's a very hard gear to find to replace. So I'm guessing I'm not the only one who's had this difficulty. So my plan is to replace that fourth gear, replace the washer, replace all of the rubber O-rings, all the washers, all the circlips, the three little balls. I think I might reuse those. Those are actually just fine. They do what they're supposed to do. I will show this assembly being assembled on my next video as I start to put things back together. I've got parts on order right now. Once all of that comes in, then I'll show you the reassembly, and the reassembly will include putting the engine back in the bike, since I did not show the engine coming out of the bike. And then hopefully, if you are somebody who's yet to start on such a project, you can kind of reverse engineer that to figure out how to take your engine out of the bike. But I mean, really, these are all the tools that I use. Just some circlip pliers and some paper towel to clean up a little oil as I went. It wasn't very hard to disassemble. Everything comes apart nicely. To be clear, I wanted to make it clear that this bad washer was the source of the entire problem. Obviously, it went bad. That rinky-tink sound that I heard, that I was reporting on the very first video, even though the audio in that first video wasn't very good, that was the washer failing and little chunks traveling around the engine for a bit before they settled at the bottom. What that did was, because that washer was gone, it allowed fourth gear to travel out of position and get jammed. What exactly was the nature of the jam up, whether it was against second, third, or perhaps against the counter gear, I'm not sure, but it was out of position for sure, because there was nothing to retain it. So it was able to move along the shaft when it shouldn't have been. So anyway, that little bit of lateral movement apparently was the cause of the whole problem. Yeah, so that was the whole problem right there. That cost me a riding season. At least for me, because I can only work on this on the weekends. So anyway, we'll get her back together soon. Okay. Appears that we're ready to reassemble this thing finally. That only took 2 months. The toughest part was finding, for the 06 Kawasaki Vulcan 900, good luck finding the fourth gear. I don't know what the deal is with these. In 2008 they went to a replaceable bushing. This one is particularly sloppy on the shaft. So, actually it goes on the other side. But I wasn't happy with that at all. And there's no guidance. You can hear it. There's a lot of slop in there. And I think all that occurred when this lovely washer here destroyed itself, which is supposed to keep fourth gear in place. And you can see this incredible score mark on the washer where the metal's completely deformed and split out. So somehow or other it galled against the edge of that bushing, and actually I can see, oh yeah, I can see the little chew marks. I can even feel it with my fingernail where it just ate that washer. So this bore, I don't even know if that's the replaceable bushing or not, because there's very little documentation I can find anywhere online. So trying to get the fourth gear from the factory. I don't care what model year you looked at, it says, it'll either say not available, or it'll say 8-week delivery, or it'll say, you know, from the factory, some kind of nonsense. It's like Kawasaki doesn't want to make that gear at all. I mean, you can get every other gear in the transmission, but you can't get the fourth gear. Or apparently the bushing. And apparently that is the major failure mode. Talking to other people, that's the way these transmissions tend to go, if they go. So you would think that Cowie would be making these by the gross, and apparently they're not. I don't know if that's to force you into a new motorcycle or what, but thanks to eBay, I went ahead and got myself all kinds of spare parts without spending a fortune. Here's an entire shift barrel. That's the new one, or newer one. And here is the entire transmission. Drive shaft, and I've got the counter shaft down there too, for the, actually it goes like that, for the 08, which is going to be the exact same transmission, the exact same gears. The only difference is the fourth gear is snug as a bug. It's not floating around all over the place. This one looks like, if the guy rode his bike, I'd be amazed. There's like virtually no wear on these teeth or the dogs or anything, so I'm actually considering just doing a complete swap and putting this gear train in. I'm going to pull it apart and inspect it, of course, but it looks really solid, so that's probably going to be the one I'm going to go with. I've got the other shaft here. Got my counter shaft right here. Now the only thing is, on this counter shaft, the output shaft's got a bit of rust on it. I don't like that. I'll just have to do a gear by gear inspection, and then we'll decide who gets to play on the rebuild. I'm still leaning towards this 2008 because that would be a gear train that's seen. I can just tell by looking at it. It's seen considerably less use than mine. So there's the repair parts, counter shaft, input shaft, and there's all my original parts. We're ready to start reassembling. I have all my repair parts for the entire engine, courtesy of AZ Moto City out in Arizona. If you're rebuilding a Kawasaki, I highly recommend those guys. They're great to work with on the phone. They're great to place the order with. Moto City Anthem, Phoenix, Arizona. Check them out online. This was a nearly $700 order for parts, and they had virtually everything in stock. I mean, it was pretty impressive, actually. And they give a heck of a good discount. They were out of every place. I mean, I spent hours digging around the net trying to find the cheapest price, and these guys were by far, by at least 10%, if not more, were the better price. And some of these parts are get a little expensive real quick. But on reassembly, you'll see exactly how it goes together with the circlips, brand new circlips and everything, so that you can just, if you're still in the disassembly phase, you'll be able to take yours apart by simply walking the process backwards. Make sure that when you're doing your disassembly inspection, that you keep track of the 3 little shift balls for going from first to second. Inspect the dogs, the quality of the surface of the dogs, and the receivers on the other side where those dogs engage, looking at the edges, looking at the face, how much they've scraped and eaten. Those are important. If they're looking really badly chewed, you need to replace them. Replace the individual gears. Hey, sports fans, some days when I review my videos, I listen to myself and I say, I'm one slip away from the banana peel. Yes, I did not show you how to disassemble the transmission when I took this one apart. However, I have this one right here that I can disassemble and show you the disassembly of the input shaft and the counter shaft. So let's do that. This is your input shaft, okay? You have an input shaft and a counter shaft. The input shaft being driven by the crankshaft, and then you have the output shaft, which then translates that power to the rear wheel through the output shaft and the output counter shaft gears. Excuse me. Output shaft, counter shaft, same thing. So I've got a needle bearing on the end, retained by a clip, and I think you would call it a C-clip. It's not a standard. It's a circlip, but it doesn't have any ears to it. So just be aware of that when you're pulling that off. I've got a pair of tools. I've got several pair of tools here. This one has flat jaws, which I think is appropriate for removing that. So let me try to just spread that a little bit. Keep my fingers around so it doesn't go for a walk across the room. Let's see here. Let's try it this way. Try it like this too. I'll try it any way that works. I'll turn it around here so you can see what I'm doing better. I may actually manage to get it off here before I run out of space for video. Of course, the trouble is it wants to walk as soon as you spread it. Come here. Actually, I could do this. There we go. I use the bearing that time to push it a little and shove it off of the groove. And we'll see, I think I do need a small screwdriver. Or about a tiny pry bar that's made just for the job. And I'm keeping my finger over it so it doesn't go flying completely across the room. There we go. One circlip. I'm going to line these up just like I've got my existing input shaft. Needle bearing came off nicely. Not bad. And I lay them down as they come off, down. As they come off, down. Just so that there's a consistency to what I'm doing. It'll make life easier later. bit of bluing on them. It's interesting. And the size, well, my old ones have some bluing, but I just noticed also the size of the shims. Same shaft size, it's just a physically larger shim. That may be a change they made with the 08. So, this baby slides right off. This is the second, third gear combo gear. They're together, second, third, if I remember correctly. And then it's washer time. And actually the washer I keep complaining about is causing all the issues is not actually a washer, it's a circlip. There's a washer right behind it. Once again, if you can see it, right there, there is a circlip. It's got a little V-shaped notch in it on either side. I'm going to use my pullers with the arms on it. I'll try and engage it better. These are the 45-degree spreaders. I'm thinking maybe I got to go to the straight. Let me try the straight jaw set. Oop, wrong set. Helps if the jaws move the correct direction when you squeeze them. Really something. So we're going to stop the video for a second while I dig that out of there because I'm burning video time. Okay, so I'm going to give you a good close-up of this. This is the 2008 input shaft that I'm disassembling. I was working and fighting with the circlip, which finally gave it up. There she sits. That is a booger to get out, and despite the fact that it has those two lovely little notches, those two little ears, you'd think you'd be able to grab that very easily. I suppose if you have a pair of circlip removers with the perfect ends on it, you might be able to engage that and stay, but the ones that I've got here, which are garbage brand, there you go. Anyway, the pins are so small, if I can get it to focus, the pins are so small that they won't stay engaged very well in that opening. They're too small, they cam out. So I ended up going with the knurled jaw set because the knurling on these jaws allowed me to engage it and stay engaged long enough to walk it off of the shaft. So I got that off. The next thing that's holding the gear on is just a washer, but once that circlip is gone, the washer can float a little bit, so be careful when you're pushing it off. If I can create a little gap there, you can see that it floats. It's once you're, like right now, I can't get it off because it's fallen into that circlip groove. So let me walk this back and forth. Maybe I can get her to center. There we go. I got her to center up by putting it on its back for a second. And then there's fourth gear. There's my input shaft. There's my new fourth gear. Now, this fourth gear being the 2008 variety, there is the lovely bushing. Okay, with an oil hole in it. And that is what I also could not lay my hands on. I did try to fit this bushing into the 2006, and it occupies exactly the same diameter as what's already in there. So it's easy to see that with a fresh one of these, I could push it through with a press and install this new bushing into the gear, and it would be restored and ready to run again. It's a nice slip fit on this 2008. You can see that it moves it moves smooth, but it's not free. You know what I mean? It's a nice slip fit. I can feel it's got a teeny bit of grit on it. I'm going to clean it up with some oil before we put it back in service. But here's the lineup the way it should have been, not the way that it is on this 2006 drivetrain. Also, the other difference I saw was the size of these spacer washers. You can see there's a difference in the diameter. The gear itself is no different. If you look at the machining, the size of this face that these washers are sitting on, it's the same. It's just a bigger washer. Okay, so I've got replacement parts for all. I got new needle bearings, new circlips, all that good stuff. And I think I'm just going to rebuild the 2008 input shaft, and that's the one that's going to go in. And then when we come back to do the counter shaft, I'll do the same process, inspecting gear by gear, dog by dog, and we'll see. We'll pick the best bits and make a nice transmission that will last me for a few more years, or until I decide to sell, whichever comes first.